I hit the live button. Bob Morton has not got kicked out of his suite at Life Stadium. And you're saying, what is this? What is this program? It's Into the End Zone. It's Bob Morton and Eric Hansen talking Notre Dame football after a 51-14 Notre Dame rout, which is a little bit surprising. And this is our theme music made by Steve Lundgren. And we'll just pot this down and we'll get ready to talk some football with you. One thing to do here is start filling up the question queue, because about halfway through we'll start taking your guys' questions and your girls' questions if you're a girl. And I'm sure I've got all kinds of things. Bob, I had to give a bonus game ball. Usually only give out 2. I ended up giving out 3. And can you guess who my third one was? It was to an offensive lineman.
Ooh, third one to the offensive lineman. I mean, did you give it to Billy? Did you give it to Billy Stroud for the comeback today? Yeah, I did.
So, but anyways, okay. We are here to talk about Notre Dame's 51-14 win over Navy. That's the first 6-game winning streak of the Marcus Freeman era. It's also the first time he's gone through September, October, or November undefeated. And they go into a bye week with 4 games left, a 7-1 record, and still squarely in the playoff picture. So, Bob, let's get your initial thoughts on the game. Let's start with the overall big picture.
Yeah, overall big picture is quite simply this. I don't know that I have ever seen a more prepared Notre Dame for a game. And what I mean by that is, when you look at what Navy tried to do against us defensively, we made adjustments or had adjustments prepared for what they were going to do. We were using essentially 2 sets of motion to get Navy to show us what they were going to do, and utilizing the cadence, and then making audibles at the line of scrimmage. The touchdown to Bo Collins, there was a delay in between what I thought was the cadence and the actual cadence, and they had made a shift to throw that ball deep down the sideline. And then, more importantly, defensively, what you love when you see your team play against Navy is hands weren't on the hips for the defensive line. Anytime Navy, what they like to do is keep their team on the field, not huddle, make changes at the line, but they would make changes to their offensive scheme, drop back into shotgun, or, kind of split receivers out or bring receivers in. Every time Navy made a change, we mirrored their change. We were prepared for every single formation that they threw at us. And so 51-14 is not just Notre Dame being bigger and faster and stronger. All of those things are true, but this Notre Dame team was sharper today than we've seen Notre Dame be, at least in the 3 years of the Marcus Freeman era, but for a very long time. This was a win that was brought to you by preparation, not just by being the best on the field.
So this is the 10th ranked win for Marcus Freeman in the 26 wins he's had in 3+ years, or 2+ years at Notre Dame, his 3rd season at Notre Dame. I think the big question I want to ask you, Bob, is this just a one-off game that it's just so different than all the others that you can't really pull anything from this? Or are there elements of this win that can help Notre Dame in November, obviously with Army, but with the other teams?
Yeah, so obviously it's a different offense than you're going to see really any other week. Even the option that we're going to see against Army in a few weeks is still uniquely different than this one. However, the elements of being ready for anything that our team was, of being ball hawks and getting the ball on the ground, even if they were just careless mistakes by Navy's team, the type of preparation that this team was committed to going into Navy needs to be the standard through the end of the season. Because what can set a team apart come December, whenever we're talking about playoff time, is which team finds little kind of chinks in the armor against the defense they're going against, or can prepare to make a shift to make things harder for the offense they're going against. We as a team are difficult for Navy to prepare for, but the defense that we put on the field today was something that Navy was not ready for, and we can be surprising against every single offense we go against for the rest of the year. I also think we were going against a defense that people say knows how to turn the ball over. And
Yeah.
even though we caused 6 turnovers on the opposite side, we kept the ball safe the entire time. Like, say what you want about early season Riley Leonard. This man knows how to keep the ball in our possession. And going back the last decade, whenever Notre Dame keeps the ball in their possession, they end up doing really big things towards the end of the year. And I just feel like this team is really starting to build momentum at the right time.
I was going to ask you an offensive line question, but you rerouted me when you talked about Riley Leonard. And the reason is, do you feel like there's still more out there for him? And do you feel like he's a quarterback that can get Notre Dame into the playoff?
Yeah, so I have been a fair but a pretty big critic of Riley Leonard. I shared that I thought this team might need to flirt with being a 2 quarterback system early in the year. I just didn't see the growth and development the way that I thought I'd be seeing at this point. Um, Getting ready for Stanford and the RPO game and the quick slant game that we started to see from him was the question was that just Stanford, or are we unlocking a new level of Riley Leonard? Well, we've clearly unlocked a new level of Riley Leonard. And so, what he brings to the pocket in terms of being able to run, what he brings to the quarterback position, being able to kind of throw that ball across the middle, which he did several times today accurately. A couple of great throws to Jordan Faison that were in traffic, and what he brings in having an ability to throw over the top when it's his first read. I think that Riley Leonard not only makes us more competitive than any other quarterback on our roster, I think Riley Leonard is really difficult to account for. What I would like to see is how can we unlock Riley Leonard as a running quarterback in a complementary fashion to Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I feel like more often than not, we either give it to our running backs or we keep it with the quarterback. We don't have a really good play where we fake a handoff to the left and we work back to the right. That old school zone read that Vince Young in Texas did so well. I would like to see some type of running option with him, because I think that there were a couple times today, if he would have pulled it from the running back's belly instead of handing it off, it would have been an easy walk-in score. So that's just another level I'd love to see. That to say, I just don't know how you prepare for this offense right now if the offensive line fires on all cylinders like they were today.
And let's talk about the offensive line. And by the way, Gary, Brian, Joshua, thank you for your comments. No rhetorical questions. We need real questions when we get to the question segment. And you can compliment Bob on his bad outfit today, meaning bad as in good.
Oh,
See, I'm that old that bad. Anyways, let's talk about the offensive line. So Billy Schrauth comes back as a starter today. First time he's played since early in the Purdue game, which was way back on September 14th. He comes in at left guard. They leave Rocco Spindler at right guard. So what are your thoughts about them making that move? And then how do you feel like Billy Schrauth maybe helped the offensive line today with his presence?
yeah. So second question, then back to the first. He had a really good game. I texted you in the middle of it. I was
Right.
surprised. I just recognized 74 wasn't 72. He looked really stout in pass protection. I thought the middle of the offensive line looked light years ahead of where they've been in the past, and the defensive line just didn't stand a chance of getting to the quarterback. And then in run blocking, he looked good and aggressive. I think Sam Pendleton may have a leg up in run blocking. He's kind of a mauler there in the left guard position, but I think being able to bring in another set of experienced eyes. So your internal three are 3 guys with a lot of experience with Rocco, Pat, and now Billy. It just when you have a defense that is going to need to blitz to get pressure, the more experience you have, the better. And I think that he did a really good job of just providing just a solid, calming presence there at the left guard position. Now, was I surprised to see him kind of come back and make the shift? Not necessarily. A couple reasons why. Number one, Rocco's done a really good job ever since he came in at right guard. Rocco's held up his end of the bargain. He pulls really well. Whenever we're running effectively, it's because 50's really doing his job and kind of being a bowling ball, getting up into the hole. Second thing is, I don't know how Billy's feeling. His ankle being hurt. Sometimes I remember my 4th year, I got rolled up on, and I got rolled up on my on my right ankle, and I had played center and both guards going into that game, got rolled up on my right ankle, and there was something about my right-handed stance that really gave my ankle a problem, but getting in my left-handed stance, I didn't have a problem with
Hmm.
it. And so it
Okay.
could be details about his injury. He's just closer to being back on the field at the left-hand side. It could have been something they saw, in not the lack or the slow development of Sam Pendleton. I can't speak to why he went in over Sam, other than they felt like looking for their best five, that he
Right.
was the one they wanted to have in there. But no knock against 72. 74 came in and had a heck of a game. And while I won't give him offensive player of the week, I think there's some other people who are a little more deserving of that. He had a great game for that offensive line today.
Yeah, I I jimmied the math on that so that we would have 3 game balls because I didn't think I could give it to him over, but I do think he brings a level of toughness, and I think he also raises the ceiling for this offensive line. And yes, Brian, he wasn't for Sam Pendleton. Sam actually was the leader in snaps for the whole team, offense or defense, coming into this game. He did play some with the second team offensive line, which came in pretty early. They came in early in the fourth
Yeah.
quarter. So he was with that group. So let's talk about the defense a little bit. And we've got a question from Jeff Stevens. And I'll let you take a first stab at this, and then I'll jump in on it too. Why didn't Drake Bowen play more in the first half? And then we'll get into some more general
Yeah, Jeff, I
defense.
think that's a great question, especially because the last game that Drake played, he was the best player on the field, right? It wasn't close. I think when you're looking at a game like Navy, you're looking at a unique offense that you're planning to play against. And so you're not necessarily needing someone who fits the holes the same way you would against a traditional pro style, I formation, or even a single back, formation the way we have. You need someone who is laterally quick, trusts their eyes, is able to really, make a problem at the line of scrimmage, not necessarily, tackle to tackle, but kind of outside and in space. And so I think that they probably saw Drake Bowen more in the Jack Kaiser realm. Like
Right.
they felt like it was either or Drake or Jack rather than putting them next to each other. And you saw, a junior Tuialamaka, who I think deserves the game ball on defense, have an outstanding game. Jalen Sneed was all over the place. You saw a bunch of players that you don't hear their name week in and week out because of their skill set in stretching plays to the sideline and filling the gap outside the ends. You saw a lot of names that you don't normally see. You also saw a really heavy dose of defensive backs because they're filling in the alley, and so you're seeing
Right.
the safeties having big games, the corners making plays when they're not on an island in the passing game. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with Drake's game. I think I wouldn't be surprised with him being the leading tackler the next time the Irish take the field. I just think when it comes down to an either or between a young Drake Bowen, who's just a man on the field, and a
Right.
Jack Kaiser, who's also a man but has some experience against this offense, you're going to take the experience every day.
I'm glad we have men on this team. I think, yeah, I think when Notre Dame goes back and plays Florida State, you're going to see Drake Bowen back on the field and him continuing to ascend. Jalen Sneed had a career high 9 tackles. He had a touchdown today. Maybe this gets him jump started. He's been in the teens the last few games with his reps, so he's been the lowest rep of those 5 linebackers that rotate. For him to have a really good game today may be a jump start. And he's had success against triple option football before, so it was good to see him get in the game. Let's keep with questions, Bob, and we may jump back to some of my boring questions here. So let's get a good one here from Charles Wolf. Does Kedron Young deserve a little bit more than garbage time? It's hard to say who I would ask to take touches away from, but it sure seems like he has something to offer. Bob, you first and then me.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that any other team, he might be working his way in quite a bit, but you've got a pretty healthy rotation at the running back position. Your first and second downs are pretty exclusively between Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Third down, you've got either of those two, probably more Jeremiah Love, and then you bring in Aeneas Williams. I think, coming in to be a running back at Notre Dame, your understanding of what the stable looks like here. But ultimately, I don't know where you'd get him snaps other than maybe a formation where Jeremiah Love splits out in the slot. I think he has looked really, really good. But I've just got to trust he's making, a lot of work with his practice reps. He's doing everything that, you want him to do, and that you've spent time with him, letting him know what the runway looks like to long-term success at Notre Dame. And so as much as I'd love to see more athletes on the field, we've got one of the best athletes in college football at running back right now. I just don't know that there's anybody to take those snaps from. You're spot on, Charles, but I see that talent the same way you do.
This reminds me a little bit of when it was Logan Diggs and Audric Estime as freshmen. And Logan Diggs got on the field sooner, as Aeneas Williams is. And Audric, you're thinking, well, what's wrong with Audric? Well, there was nothing wrong with him. He really got going the next year. I don't know if it'll take to next year for Keaton to get his opportunities. He was injured almost the whole spring. He does give you a different body type than anybody else on the roster. But I really liked, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Bob, that Jeremiah Love was handling a lot of the third downs today. It wasn't just a Devin Ford or an Aeneas Williams. We saw a lot of Jeremiah. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, I think that when you have a huge stable of running backs, you want to try and keep everybody happy. And obviously, a Devin Ford and Aeneas Williams both can block. They've been serviceable, kind of even receiving the ball. They work well as third down backs. But when you have a third down, what you need is a running back who can step up and block. But also, if they get they get out into a receiver's route from the backfield, they are a threat. And there's no bigger threat that we have, arguably, on the entire field than Jeremiah Love out of the backfield. And so anytime you bring in Aeneas Williams, as good as he has been, you are taking Jeremiah Love out of third down. And I think Jeremiah Love could be a serviceable third down back in the NFL right now. So I just think that the longer we go into the season, the more we start kind of gearing up for these games that are basically playoff win and you're in type games. I think you're going to see Four stick around in third downs more because he can do everything. We've seen what he can do in bits and pieces. He's not just a home run back. He makes everybody miss, and he's guaranteed 2.5 yards. But he also can break it any given time. And when you check down the ball to him, he might break it for 25. Like when I say I want Jeremiah Love to have 20-25 touches, that's exactly how you get him those touches, by those check downs you can get on third down.
Thank you for feeding Bob's ego.
I needed
and
that.
If you want to feed him, if you want to ask more questions, get him in now, because we only have a few minutes left in the show.
I've got 3 minutes. They just told me I've got to get out of this suite here at MetLife Stadium. So
Okay.
3 minutes, and then I'm going to bounce.
Okay, here we go. What are Freeman's priorities with the bye week? What would you make the priority? And I'll weigh in, and then we'll kick you out of here.
Yeah, so I think that differently than kind of before. I think that you want to try some different things on the offensive line. If I'm honest with you, I think that as I talk to other linemen who have kind of been watching games, not any of our current linemen, but previous linemen, I think that we're starting to see some unfortunate trends happening with our tackles from time to time. Anthony Knapp's a little heavy-handed. He didn't get called for a holding today, I don't think, but he had a couple of calls early on, or a missed assignment
Emil
in that
had
first
one.
series. Yep, Emil had one as well. So I think you need to make sure that there's still a fire lit under those guys, that just because you were starting the first 7 games of the season doesn't mean you're guaranteed the rest of them. I'm not suggesting you make changes, but I think that you've got to make sure that they know there are people who can be serviceable behind them. And then outside of that, I think that you're starting to implement some things that you will show over the next 4 or 5 weeks. You are in the last stretch of the season now. And so, hey, we are doing things offensively that we couldn't do at the beginning of the year. Here are some things that we're going to unleash that are going to be kind of fun over the next 4 weeks, because you got to make sure you don't get into a dog days scenario with 2 potentially cold weather games in November coming. You want to make sure that everybody's pretty excited. So find healthy ways to have competition, get your starters some rest, and find creative ways to get everybody involved.
I'm banking that 3 of them are going to be cold weather games, because I think that one in Yankee Stadium is going to be freezing with an open air press box. We'll make sure that. Are you going to that game, Bob?
I will be there. Yes.
Okay, we'll have you do the show with an open air press box.
Fantastic.
So, well, that's going to do it for into the end zone, because Bob's going to be out of the luxury suite box in about a minute. So thanks everybody for your questions, your comments, for joining us. Watch the replay if you want to see the magic all over again. We will be back with this show after the Army game on November 23rd. Tyler James and I will be back with more analysis later tonight on post-game takeaways. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Hey, Eric, and one last thing. If you guys want to go on and add comments to this video, I'll try and get on a little later tonight and answer them. I feel bad that we're ending it a little sooner than we normally do. Ask your questions in the comments. I'll go on YouTube and try and answer them.
Okay, that's a deal. Ask your questions and Bob will answer them, and I will critique his answers, and knowing that he's bigger than me, I'll give him compliments. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great
Go
weekend.
Irish.